peoples of the worldwide federated internets. What's good? Yeah, I'm up late, read my Bible, going over some thoughts. So, I'm up late, obviously, clearly, and normally when I'm up late, either there's something on my mind, I'm gonna be up late praying about it, or I'm gonna be reading my Bible and just going over some thoughts. But during this time, this extended lockdown in some states, not all states, people are going hungry. People's businesses are collapsing, and in some of these different states, their fix, some of the government officials, their fix is to give money to the people. Now, I can't tell you exactly how I feel about this situation. I'm kind of at an impasse. I'm in between, and I'll tell you why I'm in between. These businesses were forced to shut down by local governments. The federal government gave guidelines on what should be done. The local, county, state governments decided to shut down, put whatever ordinances in place. So we can shift the blame. We can blame the federal government. We can blame the local government. We can blame the state governments. That's kind of irrelevant. What I want to deal with is the fix. And the reason I say I'm in between on just wholesale giving people money, because that's not the way. I will explain why I believe biblically that's not the way. But along with that, you have the fact that these businesses were forced to shut down by external forces. So in some ways, the government owes these businesses, because these businesses, a lot of which would have had no problems had we not had this shutdown. So that's why I say I'm in between on this. I'm not typically one that's in favor of handouts, but also in my mind, I wrestle with this because I think to myself, is this really a handout? Since they forced the businesses to shut down, caused some of these people to go out of business, really causing coming bankruptcies. So in all actuality, it's not the fault of the people. Really, the government is at fault. And that points to a larger issue. You have to think logically through some things sometimes. I'm not all knowing. I like to think I have a little bit of logic. Seeing how the government at large handled this situation, I don't want to give more power to the government. I don't want them to have more power. I would actually rather them have less power, because this situation is, if nothing else, yet further proof that these people really don't know how to deal with problems on a mass scale. Problems on a mass scale, in my opinion, are better when they're dealt with at the most communal level possible, right? For example, I'm not necessarily against public education. I see the use case for it, but I think the responsibility of educating children should fall on the parents. Now, am I saying that a parent that doesn't understand a topic should be teaching their children that topic? I'm not necessarily saying that, but there's different avenues and different ways and different outlets and different things that can be used. a lot of people learn things on their own. There's people who've taught themselves how to program. How did they do that? Did they literally just get on a computer and start programming? No, they watched some videos online, watched some lectures, did some practices, maybe bought a book, and they were able to teach themselves how to program. Programming is a complex thing. My youngest son taught himself how to program at a basic level, but nonetheless taught himself how to program before going off to college. So there's resources on the internet for complex topics. So again, I believe that big issues like that should be handled at the most communal level possible, because I believe big government is like a cumbersome beast that can't really move around with any degree of nimbleness. The ability to make quick adjustments, that's something that big government cannot do. When something is wrong and there needs to be an adjustment, big government comes to a grinding halt. If you're doing something at a more communal level, at a smaller level, it is easier for you to say, all right, this is not working. Let's stop right here and let's move on and let's do something else. Let's try something else. But anyway, I wanted to get to a verse and I started rambling. Y'all know how I do. So I'm in the book of Proverbs, and chapter 4 says something. It said, or chapter 20 verse 4 says something. It says, the sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold. Therefore, because he won't plow, it's cold outside, so he doesn't want to get out there and plow. So because of that, therefore, he shall beg in a harvest and have nothing. And there's another verse in this same chapter, verse 13. It says, love not sleep, lest thou come to poverty. Open thine eyes, and thou shalt be satisfied with bread. Now, this is the reason why those verses, as I was reading, stuck out to me and why they are important. It's better for a person to work and receive a reward for that work. Sustenance, things they need to survive, a roof over their head, clothes on their back, transportation to and from work, some enjoyments. Those verses are not part of the prosperity teaching of the day. Those verses did not promise riches. The only thing that those verses promised is, if you work, you'll have your needs met. You put your head down, put your hand to the plow, do some labor, whatever that is, whether you're an engineer or whether you're a hairstylist or whether you work at a restaurant, whether you work at Walmart, you put your head down, put your hands to the plow, do your work. You'll eat. That's how this should work. This is why I'm not in favor of everybody sitting at home taking government handouts if it's not necessary. But as I said, I'm at an impasse, because is this really a government handout? Technically, no. This is our money. This is our money that we paid in taxes. And a lot of people who are out of work right now because the government forced businesses to shut down. Local and state governments forced businesses to shut down. And because of that, people are not making money. So where that put me is, I understand we're in a very unique situation, but I think it is time for the country to just fully open back up and stop playing around. I just think it's time. And that's, I know that's, it's funny as it is, that's a controversial stance right now, because there's some people who believe we should not get back to normal at all. But this is my problem with that. And I've honestly given this much thought. And here's my problem with that. A lot of people say, well, we'll open back up in the end of June, or we will open back up at the end of the year. We're open back up in this month or that month. What changes? What changes from now to those months? Is there going to be less of the virus around in those months than there are now? Okay, if so, what evidence do you have of this? What proof? What model do we trust for that information? As we've seen in the past 3 months, models aren't to be trusted. We're living in real life. We're not living in a model. We're living in real life. That doesn't mean that models are always wrong. That's definitely not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that models are always wrong. And I'm not saying that a model can't be right. But we've trusted models. That hasn't worked. Now what? Do we continue to trust models when it's been already proven that that hasn't worked? People need to get back to work. Working is a biblical concept. Working to receive that just rewards, to have the needs of life met from working hard and receiving rewards from that. That's a biblical principle. Sitting around and getting handouts unnecessarily. I'm not saying we shouldn't take care of those who are in need, because that's also a biblical principle. But right now, what we have government forced need. There's people who can work that don't really have to sit around, that are being forced to sit around. And I don't think that's a good thing. And I don't think that's a biblical thing. So I personally believe we need to open back up. I know some people may see that as irresponsible, but as I said, just logically thinking, and I understand some of these scientists have their models. What is going to change in a month, in 2 months, in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks? I understand the whole concept of locking down, of quarantine, flatten the curve. I get it. Okay, the curve is flattened. What now? So now we stay in for what reason? People can take preventative measures. People can decide on their own what risk they're willing to take. Kind of like Elon Musk when he told, his workers, whatever you're comfortable with, I'm opening the plant up. You come to work if you're comfortable. If you're not comfortable, don't come to work. To me, that's the way this should have been done from the get-go. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying that I'm right. I could be wrong, but that's just what I think. People need to get back to work. We don't need to have people sitting around doing nothing. I don't think most people want to sit around and do nothing. Of course, you always have those people that are going to want to sit around, collect money, and do nothing. That's always going to happen. But from what I'm seeing, I think the majority of people just want to get to work. I think the majority of people appreciate being self-sustaining. I don't want to be sustained by my government. I want to be sustained by the work of my own hands to receive blessings from God. I don't want to sit around, do nothing, and wait for Big Daddy, Mr. King government to give me something. That's not what I want to do. I want to work, and I want to provide for myself through the labor of mine own hands and receive the blessing of God from keeping the principle of God of hard work. Hard work is a biblical thing. So I think personally, that's what we need to get back to. Small thought, nothing crazy. Stay frosty, people.